Shalom. Welcome, everyone. Bruchim habayim, blessings upon all of you, and Shalom Aleichem, peace be upon you. Salam Aleikum, welcome, peace. Glad that everyone is here with us this morning. I'm Rabbi David Eber, and it's my honor to welcome you to Congregation Beth Shalom. And before I hand it over to Dan and Regina, let's take a moment to say a prayer for our intention this morning, which is needed. It's important that we have a space like this where we can come together, different stripes, different races, different religion, different genders, to be together, to honor the memory of Dr. King, and today to also learn about Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of his dear friends, and that their relationship is a model for what we're doing here, of connecting with each other in a time of such polarization, to lean into their relationship, which says we should be together. We should be together, and we should not be indifferent. So if you're comfortable praying, I invite you to assume prayer position. And we'll start with the Jewish blessing for the meal, which is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, God, who brings forth bread from the earth. And we know that there is not a bread tree. So we are grateful for the gifts of the earth that you, the source of life, have given all of us this morning. And we're grateful for the many hands that have transformed those gifts into food for us to receive in our bodies and in our spirit. And may that food nourish us in the spirit of togetherness, in the spirit of blessing and light. And in the God of many names we pray and we say, Amen. I'll turn it over to Dan or Regina. I'm not sure which, or if you're both coming up and you'll tag team it. Okay.
Yes.
Come on up.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Rabbi. Isn't Rabbi great?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Rabbi. This is terrific. How many people have been to a synagogue before? So I can't raise my hand. I've never been. So it's wonderful to bring everybody together. And obviously, one of the things we've learned during this wonderful journey together, learning about Dr. King, is that we are trying to build and continue to build a beloved community, which is the ultimate goal of all of us, to be together and to work together. So I'm Dan Wagner I work for the Inland Real Estate Group of Companies. This concept was started by my boss, Dan Goodwin, who just passed away in January. I have some of my fellow Inlandite folks here, Inlanders here. And it's a wonderful tradition that he started to be able to continue. And of course, the DuPage Foundation is a big part of what we're doing, because all of the money that we raise goes to the fund that Mr. Goodwin created, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Fund of DuPage Foundation. And we're blessed to have them to be able to manage the money and also to identify the needs through an empirical process to give out the money. So some people asked if Regina and I, if we just sit at a table and just dole out the money, and the answer is no. But so the fund netted about $115,000 last year after all expenses, which is all of you guys helping out. And it's a wide open book to be able to go and ask the foundation the expenses of what we spent money on and all that kind of stuff. But one of the reasons why we're able to save money is because of people like Bob Berlin. Bob Berlin is our DuPage County State's Attorney, who also happens to be Jewish, and he asked, since I'm Jewish, can I pay for the breakfast this morning? So anybody that feeds me, I want to make sure to congratulate and say thank you to Bob Berlin. And did you all know that Bob Berlin just got reelected again as State's Attorney of DuPage County? This is terrific. And another law enforcement person we have in the room, just so everyone knows, is the Chief Judge of DuPage County, Bonnie Wheaton, who's here. So thank you, Bonnie Wheaton, our Chief Judge. And I got to tell you, my own family have learned more about the Jewish faith. We've adopted Sam Miller, and he lives with us, and we've learned and working, and everybody knows I have a whole bunch of outdoor decorations for Christmas. Well, this year my wife's like, for Sam, we get to put out some Hanukkah stuff. So I'm like, I gotta go buy. I've never bought a Hanukkah blow up before, but I got to find out where those are at. So, Sam, thank you for bringing all the different culture and religious experiences in our lives too. Well, the next event we have, and Regina, you got to get up here and talk about January 20th. So everybody gets to be able to eat and enjoy all of our events for the good graces of all of our different groups and organizations coming together. But the thing that we ask all of you is to be able to please get sponsors or sell tickets for January 20th. And without any further ado, Regina, could you come up and tell everybody about January 20th? The last event we have for this group before January 20th is coming out is Morton Arboretum. They're going to provide us with free tickets to go to Illumination. So I know people have been asking me, can I get more than a couple tickets? The answer is possibly, but we have to first let the committee members to verify that they can go first. And then the Inland Real Estate Group is going to be paying for the hot chocolate and holiday cookies. And then we're going to hear from Morton Arboretum CEO, and then we're going to get the Illumination. You can go on your own and have fun and see in the tour. That's clearly not a learning environment for learning about Dr. King, but what we want to do is also having a beloved community requires people to enjoy and play together too. So this is a fun thing to say thank you to everybody who are volunteers, like all of you, to keep coming and learning about these things. So the center board of this organization that makes it real, and someone who I look up to and admire is this lady who's about ready to talk, Regina Brett. So Regina.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask all the law enforcement officials, county officials, state pastors, will you all please stand? We would like to give you a round of applause for your elections, for your consultations during this time of the year for the presidential election. We want to make sure that we say congratulations and just thank you for what you're doing to represent all of us. State's Attorney Bob Berlin, when you stand, this gentleman, I saw him on the TV yesterday, something that Dr. King would very much approve of, the release of innocent incarcerations is what he will be facilitating throughout the Attorney General's office. And so that's my old office, that's where I retired from, and so he's now with a boss that I never got a chance to work with, which is Kwame Raoul. So thank you very much for that effort that you're putting together in order to assist with the Attorney General and the State's Attorney's Office from Cook County and all the other law officials that will be in on that particular effort. So thank you, Bob, for that. And Reverend Denise, will you stand? This is our DEI manager of Naperville. And of course, Dan, Judge, will you stand? Where is she? I know I saw her in the room. Yes. Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending time with us. And last but not least, the most phenomenal guy I've met recently, who thought it was worthy that unity comes back into the community, no matter what political stance you may have, what your religious stance is, the color of your skin. This man is to be honored for all the efforts he put into this MLK project, and that is my own very friend, good friend, my brother, Mr. Daniel Wagner. And I would be remiss to say that in his absence, or in their absence, Dr. Carroll and Mr. Goodwin, I've had the honor to speak at Inland about my life and how I could appreciate the changes that have been made in order to have the opportunity in this country to become who I am today, based on my needs, being and living through a humble beginnings, that this gentleman, Mr. Goodwin, would think enough of my people, my race, to want to reinstate a project which would be the MLK project that had not been here for 8 years, but he thought the need was dire. It was a dire need to bring it back simply because of the geographic area changing as it has over the last 24 years that I've been out here. And he spoke about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that is what we are working on. And so I want to give you a round of applause to yourselves for coming out, for taking the time to add to this effort so that we can continue this breakfast, because we could not do it without you supporting us. So give yourselves a round of applause. And I hope we can continue throughout the year. But I just want to say, oh boy, technology. King called all Americans to unity and reminded us of the power of obeying the biblical command for Christians to love one another. And as he said, we must all learn to live together as brothers or perish as fools. And I think that we're putting a great effort to trying to continue to live together, no matter who's in charge, who's running the White House or the outhouse. We must find a way to continue to come together and love one another. And so with that being said, on January 20th, we will hopefully have another opportunity to come together on the day that we commemorate and celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And with that being said, I tried very hard, Dan and I, both of us, we always try very hard to make sure that that keynote speaker is not just someone who was sitting on the curb while the parade of civil rights were going by, but someone who was involved in the trenches of the civil rights movement. And that last speaker was Mr. Bob Zellner, who had worked with Stokely Carmichael to make change throughout the community. He was a blue-eyed white soul brother who registered Black people during trying times of the 50s and the 60s. And so he was our keynote speaker last year. But yet this year, I am truly honored to introduce to you a name that we probably all forgotten, or was just someone that was an unsung hero for many, many years, but is a renowned person in his lifetime who is still with us today, which is Mr. Fred Gray. He was the attorney for Rosa Parks when she was arrested on the bus. But he was first the attorney for another young lady who was 16 years old, but she was pregnant when she sat on the bus. And they could not use her as an example because they didn't think that it would be appropriate to have a young teen pregnant mother to represent the cause. And so that is why Rosa Parks was the person who was designated to make change in that state, to bring about unity and equality and civil rights for all the people. Mr. Fred Gray now is 93 years old, will be 94 when you see him. So keep him in your prayers, that this weather will not intimidate him enough not to come. And then we're going to have Darius Brooks, Reverend Darius Brooks, again back because he was on a high demand, and he will be coming back for the spiritual music, and our very own, I call him a maestro, which is Anthony Vinson. And we're going to have 3 different choirs, 3 diverse choirs to bring you the melody of spirituality and religion and songs. And so there will be less speaking there, and more of a concert to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King. Did I forget anything?
You got
Mr.
it right.
Wagner? Okay. So thank you very much again for coming this morning. I hope to see you on January 20th, God willing, and we're going to continue to be the beacon of bringing people together in this state of Illinois to say that we are Christians and we do love one another and that we do believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion along with equality. Thank you.
There's nobody better. Love you, Regina. State Attorney Bob Berlin, you wanted to come up and say a few words and then pass it on to Rabbi?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Regina. Rabbi Eber, thank you and everybody at Congregation Beth Shalom for opening your doors to have everybody here. Great to see so many people from all walks of life here. This is DuPage County. This is America right here in this room. And proud to be a part of it. This committee does so much for the county, this MLK Day Advisory Committee. And it is all about bringing people together so that we can share and learn about different cultures, different histories, and understand that we all have something in common. I'll say this, that we're very fortunate in this county because we live in a county where people appreciate our diversity, they respect our diversity. I'm really proud of the work that law enforcement is doing to protect everyone here. I firmly believe that no matter who you are, no matter what religion you are, no matter what the color of your skin or where you're from, everyone has a right to be safe. And we work very hard at doing that. And by having these kinds of events where we can come together and talk and get to know each other, it helps us in law enforcement keep this community a lot safer. There's one law in the state of Illinois, and it's important that it be applied equally to everyone so that everyone feels protected. We have been very fortunate, and I'm very careful when I say this, I knock on wood, because we have not seen the hate crimes that we've seen across the country. It hasn't happened here, and we're doing everything we can to prevent it from happening here. But when you see what happened the other week in Chicago, when a man is on his way to synagogue in the morning and gets shot because of hatred and prejudice, crimes like that destroy the entire community. And anyone knows that when we do have a hate crime here, unfortunately, they have been relatively minor offenses, but when we do have one, we're very vocal in our press releases that we have zero tolerance for it because those crimes do destroy communities. So I know we're going to learn a lot today about Rabbi Heschel and Dr. King and the grand alliance that they had. The Jewish people and African Americans do have a lot in common in that regard when it comes to prejudice and hatred and discrimination. But again, Dan, I thank you, and Regina, I thank you for all the efforts, and everyone in this room for all of your efforts in bringing everyone together. Because it's by having these gatherings, these meetings, these conversations that we make our community a lot stronger. And I encourage everyone on January 20th to be at the Dr. King breakfast. It was a great event last year, and I expect the same thing this year. So again, thank you all.
All right. Welcome again, everyone. Just a little housekeeping. Should you need the facilities, you're going to want to cross the lobby all the way through the other double doors, and you'll find the restrooms there on your right. your exits are behind you, and no, okay. So thank you everyone for being here, and that message has been hammered home by me and Regina and Dan and Bob that togetherness is so important, that coming together in unity is so important. And really I want to talk to you today about a paradigmatic relationship between a very famous rabbi and, of course, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that I think their relationship is really calling out to us in this moment of being together. After my presentation, we'll have a little opportunity for questions specifically about the presentation, but then we're also going to have a tour of the synagogue. So if you have questions about Judaism or synagogues or whatever, we'll have a chance to do that as well, and we'll kind of move to the sanctuary side for that. So I'm going to try to get through this in the next 20 or so minutes here. So this is called My Legs Were Praying. The relationship between Dr. Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. So what we have here is actually a painting called Lavater and Lessig Visit Moses Mendelssohn. And this painting comes from the early to mid 1800s. And this is another very famous interfaith relationship, that Moses Mendelssohn was a very famous rabbi at the time, and he was unique in his era for being one of the first rabbis to really be fortunate enough to come out of being ghettoized and able to attend universities, and he became a PhD. He's the first person to translate the Torah into another language besides Hebrew. He translated it into German. And he was a philosopher. And Bernard Lessig was another very famous philosopher. And this was also a time of intense anti-Semitism. And so their relationship was very unique in that they were able to come together. We've probably never heard of Lessig that much, but he was a very brilliant person. He even beat Immanuel Kant in a philosophy essay contest at one point. So if you're coming in first place over Kant, you're doing pretty good. And he's famous also for writing a play called Nathan the Wise. And it's basically modeled that Nathan the Wise is really Moses Mendelssohn, is what scholarship has shown. And it paints a very different picture from, I've actually learned that it's still required reading in many German schools as well, this play, Nathan the Wise. But it's juxtaposed with the character of Shylock from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, which portrays a very anti-Semitic picture of, if you know that term, his name is in fact now, Shylock is not a term you should say to a Jewish person, right? It means they're cheap, which is a stereotype and all of these things. And Nathan the Wise is portrayed precisely the opposite. He's a noble human being. He has great moral judgment. And it's a play actually set in what was then called Palestine, today Israel, Palestine, under Islamic rule at the time. And it's about how Jews, Christians, and Muslims can all live together. And so, just like they are here in this photo, drinking tea, philosophizing together. In fact, in 1988, in Berlin, on the 50th anniversary of Kristallnacht, which is known as the Night of Broken Glass, which, by the way, its anniversary is this week, I believe. I don't know the year precisely, but the anniversary of Kristallnacht is this week, which is a night when German citizens went and broke the glass of many Jewish shops, attacked Jews in the street. So on the 50th anniversary of that in 1988, a gentleman there even spoke about the relationship between Mendelssohn and Lessig as an example for people to follow, which is beautiful, but also at the same time is a little bit sad that he had to go back so far, I think, to find something. But I want to talk to you about a different relationship right? Of course, that of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who you can see here with Dr. King. And this is when they first met, by the way, in Chicago in 1963 at a conference about race and religion. It was organized by the National Conference of Christians and Jews, which I looked up. I don't think it's an organization anymore. Maybe it's just kind of assumed. I don't know. But so it was a conference about religion and race, which Heschel actually famously said are two words that ideally should never be uttered together in the same breath. Heschel talked about racism as an eye disease in many ways, and we'll share more of his quotes later. They were very closely bonded, these two, but you don't have to take my word for it. This is a speech of the Reverend Jesse Jackson when he ran for president. And he spoke about their relationship ironically while apologizing for saying an offensive term against Jewish people, which I want to pause for a minute and just say, looking back is a very interesting and complicated story in and of itself. I do not believe the Reverend Jackson is an anti-Semite. He literally marched in Skokie against Nazis with the Jewish community. He worked with the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs to support efforts that they were doing, right? So I believe this is a man who cares about the Jewish community, and yet he referred to New York as Hymietown. And so that really hurt his campaign for president. And I think we can hold both of those things, that that was not a good thing to say, and that I don't think this is a man who actually hates Jews in his heart. But I want to share with you what in fact he said. This is in his speech. 20 years ago, and I will say I apologize that I'm breaking the cardinal rule of PowerPoint presentations by putting about 200,000 words on a slide. But that's what I did. So if you would like any of these quotes later, you can email me and I'm happy to send them to you, okay? But 20 years ago, I'm going to turn. 20 years ago, tears welled up in our eyes as the bodies of Schwermer, Goodman, and Cheney were dredged from the depths of a river in Mississippi. Let me just pause for a moment and make sure people really understand. Schwermer and Goodman were two freedom riders, Jewish freedom riders, and Cheney was a Southern African-American gentleman, and they were killed. They were all murdered together, doing work of trying to register people to vote and do civil rights work and things like this. So that's what he's referring to. When they were dredged from the depths of the river in Mississippi, 20 years later, our communities, Black and Jewish, are in anguish, anger, and pain. Feelings have been hurt on both sides. There's a crisis in communications. Confusion is in the air, but we cannot afford to lose our way. We may agree, that should say, it's right. We may agree to disagree or agree to agree or agree to disagree on issues. We must bring back civility to these tensions. We are co-partners in a long, rich religious history, the Judeo-Christian traditions. Many Blacks and Jews have shared a passion for social justice at home and peace abroad. We must seek a revival of the spirit, inspired by a new vision and new possibilities. We must return to higher ground. We are bound by Moses and Jesus, but also connected with Islam and Muhammad. These three great religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, were all born in the revered and holy city of Jerusalem. We are bound by Dr. Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel crying out from their graves for us to reach common ground. We are bound by shared blood and shared sacrifices. We are much too intelligent, much too bound by our Judeo-Christian heritage, much too victimized by racism, sexism, militarism, and anti-Semitism, much too threatened as historical scapegoats to go on divided from one another. We must turn from finger-pointing to clasped hands. We must share our burdens and our joys with each other once again. We must turn to each other and not on each other and choose higher ground. So, right, their relationship was spoken about at the highest levels as a paradigmatic relationship. So they met at this conference for race and religion at the University of Chicago in 1963, and I want to share with you Heschel's opening words. He wrote, at the first conference on race and religion, or he said, this was his speech, the main participants were Pharaoh and Moses. Moses' words were, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go that they may celebrate a festival unto me." And Pharaoh retorted, "Who is the Lord, that I should heed his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." Here's a few other things he said in that speech. Few of us realize how insidious, how radical, how universal and evil racism is. Few of us realize that racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for a minimum of reason, the maximum of cruelty for the minimum of thinking. Racism is an eye disease, a cancer of the soul. And I'm going to use his words, so he does say Negroes here, but the problem is how to stop the profanation of God's name by dishonoring Negroes. Racism is an evil of tremendous powers, but God's will transcends all powers. Surrender to despair is to surrender to evil. It is important to feel anxiety, but it is sinful to wallow in despair. Some context on Heschel. He was born in Warsaw, in Poland, and he comes from a long, distinguished line of rabbis, or the language he would have used is a Rebbe. And Rebbe's is a rabbi, but it's a particular type of rabbi in a certain type of Orthodox community known as Hasidic Jews. And Hasidic Jews are very much about emotive. It's not necessarily about how much learning you have, but are you a powerful teacher? Can you connect with people at the heart? But Heschel was also very learned, and he spoke about that when he was growing up, he felt surrounded by people of, quote, religious nobility. And so, really, what would it mean for us today, right, as an example for our children to think about what does it mean to be religiously noble? He had an incredibly difficult childhood. His father died when he was 9. This was at a time when the beginnings of the Holocaust were starting to happen, and there were Nuremberg laws and other laws that started to affect the Jewish community. And he was able to escape by virtue of his brilliance, right? He went off to study at university and then was courted by many Jewish educational centers in the United States. So he was able to escape, but his 3 sisters, his mother, many of his extended family were killed in the Holocaust. He had a story as well that his daughter, Dr. Susanna Heschel, said that it was one of his favorite family stories that he told often about his great-grandfather for whom he was named, the Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And he was a Rebbe, and so people flocked to him all the time for comfort, prayers for a sick child. They lost their job and they needed direction, right? They would come to the rabbi for prayers, comfort and prayer. And one day his assistant said, "You have so many different people who come to you with their problems. How do you keep track of it all? Like when you go to pray, how are you like, and remember so-and-so and their specific problem?" And he says, "You don't understand. When people come to me with their sorrows, I open my heart and their sorrows enter my heart and leaves a scar. And when I pray, I open my heart to God and I say, God, look at all of these scars. I think that's what it meant to be religiously noble. And I believe that Dr. King and Dr. Heschel, actually, he did have a PhD as well, saw in each other this true sense of religious nobility. Right, and you know what it is when you connect with someone like that you feel a soul connection with. When you pour out your soul to them and you have that feeling that they're listening deeply and not just waiting to speak. So, I mentioned at the age of 9, his father passed. He went to Vilna for a year and then to Berlin. In 1927, at the age of 20, he went to study. He got his PhD there. And then he went to the United States. Something else interesting about him is he became a rabbi in both an Orthodox seminary and a Reform seminary. And then when he came to, those are like the opposite poles, right? Orthodox, very traditional Jews, Reform Jews, the less traditional side. But he said, I want to know what my people are learning, right? I want to study, even though he himself was somewhere sort of in the middle, traditional but open to learning. Now, when Hitler came to power, things obviously became difficult. The University of Berlin, in fact, wouldn't give him his PhD for 3 years. And he was able to escape in March of 1940, but as I mentioned, his family was not. And we have to remember that there were theologians using religion to justify much of the Holocaust. People saying, throw out the Old Testament. Or even saying Jesus was not, in fact, an Israelite, that he was an Aryan, and that Hitler was somehow fulfilling the work of Jesus. But in the U.S., he met very thoughtful Christian theologians like Reinhold Niebuhr, who put the Old Testament at the center of Christian theology, or Dr. King, who really centered the Exodus story in the freedom struggle of the black community. So in 1963, a year after that first meeting of them at this conference, they really started to communicate more and be in relationship, and they had a remarkable series of interactions. There was another conference in 64, and I'm about to share a text of a speech that Heschel gave at this conference. I want to name in what we're about to see, he's speaking to white Americans, and he's speaking with a sarcasm. So I want to make that clear because I don't want someone to read and misinterpret. But he wrote with a lot of irony in this, and I think it's important for you to know that his PhD was in the prophets. And prophets often sort of extort people with kind of sarcastic questions, right? Will you not live up to your, right? All of this sort of thing, okay? So this is a speech he gave called The White Man on Trial, and it was published in something called The Insecurity of Freedom. It's important to name this came at a time when people were, white people, I should say, a certain segment, as Dr. King wrote in his letter from the Birmingham jail, the white moderate, as it was, that was saying, yeah, we support you, but I don't know about all this civil rights marching and pushing and stuff. And so Heschel is tisking that kind of idea here with what he says. He goes, this episode seems shocking. What a come down. Only 3 days after they had reached the highest peak of religious and spiritual exaltation, and now the Israelites he's speaking about complain about such a prosaic and unspiritual item as water. The Negroes of America are behaving just like the children of Israel. Only in 1963 they experienced the miracle of having turned the tide of history, the joy of finding millions of Americans involved in the struggle for civil rights, the exaltation of fellowship, the march to Washington. Now, only a few months later, they have the audacity to murmur, what shall we drink? We want adequate education, decent housing, and proper employment. How ordinary, how unpoetic, how annoying. We are ready to applaud dramatic struggles once a year in Washington. For the sake of our principles, we will spend a day or two in jail somewhere in Alabama. The tragedy of Pharaoh was the failure to realize the exodus from slavery could have spelled redemption for both Israel and Egypt if only Pharaoh had joined the Israelites and Moses in the desert to stand at the foot of Mount Sinai. Right? If only Pharaoh had joined with the people he had enslaved to stand together. So after they come to know one another, they're beginning to collaborate. In 1965, Dr. King is awarded multiple times awards from different Jewish organizations, and Heschel introduced him often. He was awarded the Jewish Community Award for Peace in 1965. I think an award that I'm not sure we still do, which maybe we should. But here is the introductory remark that Heschel said of Dr. King. The glory of God is concealed, yet there are moments in which it is revealed. What is the nature of the glory? Moses in great petition called upon God, "Show me, I pray, your glory." And Moses' petition was granted, right? Moses asks to see God and gets to see God's back. As my rabbi joked, that was the first mooning in the Bible. The Lord God, merciful and gracious, abundant in goodness and truth. The glory of God is concealed, yet there are moments in which it is revealed. We see a glimpse of God's glory in the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, and we honor him because his words and deeds are a marvelous glorification of God, who is merciful and gracious. Sacred and magnificent is the work that he does for all of us in America. At the same time, the scope of God's glory is the entire world, all of humanity. Now, as you know, presidents at times were often confused about what to do and how to handle the civil rights movement. JFK, in fact, invited Heschel to a meeting of civil rights leaders. Kennedy's record on civil rights was mixed, I think, as the King biographer Taylor Branch really has documented very well in his biography of King. But I want to share with you a telegram between JFK and Heschel when Heschel was invited by the president, along with Dr. King and other leaders, to talk about what to do about civil rights. Okay? This was a telegram, by the way, to set us back in time. I look forward to being present at the meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. This was in June 16th, 1963. Likelihood exists that the Negro problem will be like the weather, in that everyone talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. Please demand of religious leaders personal involvement and not just solemn declaration. We forfeit the right to worship God as long as we continue to humiliate the Negroes. Church and synagogue have failed. They must repent. Ask of our religious leaders to call for national repentance and personal sacrifice. Let religious leaders donate 1 month's salary toward funding for Negro housing and education. I propose that you, Mr. President, declare a state of moral emergency. A Marshall Plan to aid Negroes is becoming a necessity. The hour calls for moral grandeur and spiritual audacity.
That's amazing.
If only JFK had listened and put out such a call. But Heschel was there asking for it. Now, this is probably their most famous photo together of them marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the second time. Remember that the first time is now known as Bloody Sunday. Also that the Edmund Pettus Bridge is named for a Confederate general. And it's a curved bridge. Who's been there? Anyone ever been there? It's a curved bridge. I haven't been there, but I was looking at a picture and reading about this reflection that first time they were marching up the bridge, they couldn't see what awaited them on the other side till they got to the top. And when they got there, that's when they saw the gas masks and the dogs and the clubs and the police. And it became that beating that we know as Bloody Sunday, right? Representative John Lewis, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing, was there and was beaten and bloodied. And in fact, he's in this photo. I believe This is him. Dr. King, obviously, and then Heschel, who looks like Colonel Sanders. Apparently, once a kid asked if he was Santa Claus as well, which I love. Now, Heschel spoke about the violence that they experienced, which he was not present for, however, but when he heard about it, he spoke about it in very personal terms, about what happened to his family in Europe, in the entrenched poverty that he saw. And when that second march was ordered and federally protected, King asked Heschel to attend. Now, he asked Heschel on a Friday morning. Heschel is an observant Jew. The march was Sunday morning. So it was a very busy Friday for him, where he's both preparing for Shabbat, because what it means to be an observant Jew is from sundown on Friday till the appearance of 3 stars in the sky, he's not using electricity, he's not making plane reservations, right? So he had to get prepared before Shabbat so that he could fly out early the next morning. And he wrote after the march of this moment that it felt like his legs were praying, which is the title of this talk. A moment that changed his life. He decided to do something on a bigger scale. And he founded an organization, an anti-war organization, specifically called Clergy and Laymen Concerned About Vietnam. And here they are at the press conference that he organized with many different religious leaders. You can see Heschel and King at the center. This is prior to Dr. King's famous speech against the war in Vietnam, not long before his assassination. And apparently at the end of this, a reporter said, okay, that's nice that you said this nice thing against the war, but now what? And Heschel said, we're forming an organization called Clergy and Laymen Against the War in Vietnam. And apparently the others looked at him and said, we are? But that's what they did. And they held a demonstration later at Arlington Cemetery. Now, you may recall this year there was a kerfuffle at Arlington about what types of ceremonies are allowed to be held. They initially wanted to hold a rally and were denied. But they said, can we hold a prayer service? And they were told yes. And at the prayer service, you know, they had to make it prayerful, right? They couldn't just be like, well, it's a prayer service, but it's a rally. And they had a bunch of different religious leaders choose a verse from Psalms that they could say. And Heschel chose Eli, Eli, Lama Azavtani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? From Psalm 22. Now, interestingly, a reporter also recognized that someone else religious said these words. Anybody know who that is?
Jesus on the cross.
Jesus, that's right. And so they said, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel quoting Jesus Christ. No, he was quoting Psalm 22, which is what Jesus was quoting. But yes, okay, it was a funny moment. So, just to respect everyone's time, I want to get to our I want to get to the tour of the synagogue and everything like that. But to say, King, many talk about him as a prophet, right? A modern day prophet. And Dr. Heschel is a PhD in the prophets. And he wrote in his work about who is a prophet. He said, the prophet is stirred by an intimate concern for the divine concern. To be a prophet means to identify one's concern with the concern of God. The prophet is a person who is inwardly transformed. His interior life is informed by the pathos of God. It's theomorphic. He liked big words. That means like in action, right? That God is in action. The prophet holds God and man in one thought at one time, right? The prophet is a person who is inwardly transformed, whose concern is the divine concern. We heard how Heschel, when he introduced Dr. King, spoke of him as a prophet. And I think Dr. King exemplified what it means to be a prophet, and so did Dr. Heschel, to be concerned with the divine concern. Interestingly, their theologies, I think, are very similar as well, right? This is not the theology of Aristotle or of the great Rabbi Moses Maimonides, who said God is the unknowable force in the universe, that there's nothing we can know about God. God is the unmoved mover, that God set the world in motion and then sort of stepped back. That's not the God of Heschel. That's not the God of King. God is a king who cares greatly for the suffering of the people, that God is with us in our suffering, that if you injure someone, you injure God, that God is concerned about human beings. Those are their beliefs. The prophet is a man who feels fiercely God has thrust a burden upon his soul, and he is bowed and stunned at man's fierce greed. Frightful is the agony of man. No human voice can convey its whole terror. Prophecy is the voice that God has lent silent agony, a voice to the plundered, to the poor, to the profaned riches of the world. It is a form of living, a crossing point of man and God. God is raging in the prophet's words. Heschel also said, in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. And after King's assassination, he marched at his funeral. In closing, I want to share with you another longer quote that Heschel delivered at a speech in 1963 at the Concord Hotel, also about racism. Concord Hotel is a no longer existing hotel in the Catskills of New York. It was a kosher hotel. There was this whole kind of Jewish vacation industry, like if you think Green Book, right? At a certain time, there was a whole Jewish-friendly resorts, Jewish, right, only. That's what the Concord Hotel was. And he spoke in his final words of the speech in Yiddish. I'm not going to do this in Yiddish for you. I don't speak it, but I have a translation of what he said. And it's really one of the only times he spoke about his experience leaving the Holocaust. And then this is the final piece, and then we'll have time for questions in the tour. So he said, "We still feel the blow to our head. Huge chunks are falling from the heavens, but we have yet to grasp the rupture and misfortune that has befallen us. We are still waiting for the funeral. We're not ready to sit Shiva." Shiva is the Jewish mourning custom of being in your house for 7 days post-mourning. Distraught, broken, confused, and petrified, we are living in a state of chaos. We celebrate on joyous occasions, but it is akin to holding a wedding ceremony at a cemetery. Our enjoyments are awkward and even grotesque, mere this worldly pleasures. Our people were consumed by fire, and the world is unchanged. Hush, quiet, nothing ever happened. If we still had a heart, then it is turned to stone. I often sit and wonder, perhaps our souls went up in the flames with their bodies at Majdanek and Auschwitz. Ours is a godless world. We Jews dance around the golden calf. We have forgotten that we live in a world that is treif, impure. The times are dark. Yet we do not even light Shabbat candles. Our conscience is mute as well. We are inebriated and distracted by the follies of this world. The martyrs do not need us to say Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, but we need someone to recite it for us because we have lost our souls. I do not seek to merely unburden my heart. We will not fulfill our obligation by reciting lamentations. Our task is not to bang our head against the wall. Our task is to find an answer to a crucial question. What is our generation's obligation? What is the task? Not to forget, never to be indifferent to people's suffering. That was Heschel and King's central message. Never be indifferent to suffering, and speak truth. And speak truth. And so While there is much work still to do in the world, I am reminded of this quote from the wisdom of our ancestors called Pirkei Avot, which says, Hu haya omer, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin levatel mimena, which means Rabbi Tarfon said, it is not upon you to finish the work, but neither are you free to neglect it. So may all of us continue to be people in the work together of bringing light and peace and connection and togetherness, especially when it gets hard. Thank you all for being here. So if there are questions about the presentation, I'm happy to take those now. Otherwise, we can then make our way over to the sanctuary side. We want to give people a tour of our synagogue, whether you've been to a synagogue before or not. But question, yes?
Lanny Wilson here. Are we creating prophets in modern times? Is Regina, Dan, Bob Berlin, maybe you? Are you all prophets?
Well, I'm not a prophet, that's for sure. And I don't think the prophets get to declare themselves prophets, so that's one thing. But you're asking not for yourself, for others. Judaism has said, according to rabbinic tradition, that prophecy has actually ended. That people no longer that are receiving these direct communications from God. And this comes out of, I think, a couple different parts of Jewish history where we actually had false messiahs. A guy named Shabtai Tzvi, for example, who convinced hundreds of thousands of Jews to sell all their possessions and believe he was the Messiah. He was a crook, right? He ended up being caught by the Ottoman Empire, or not whoever was in charge at the time, I'm forgetting, that was an Islamic ruler, and they said, convert or die, and he converted. Right, so he was not, I don't know why I'm looking at Bob. I just picked someone and then I said. So we would say, technically no, but I think all of us do sense that, let me not speak for everyone. I feel like Dr. King and Dr. Heschel were prophetic, and maybe time will tell. But I also think there's great concern that the rabbis have about naming people as prophets, because we also have a tendency to lift up people perhaps who do not deserve such a title, right? Or who are claiming they're doing something in the name of God, and maybe they're not. Yeah.
Is there a book that you could recommend on Dr. Heschel that would help us understand him better, his life and his work?
So Heschel, not Herschel.
Heschel.
But yes, there is a great book by Rabbi Shai Held. Let me find it. Rabbi Shai Held also wrote an excellent new book called Judaism is About Love. But his previous book is called The Call of Transcendence, Abraham Joshua Heschel. Shai Held, Shaiheld. Also, you can still read many of Dr. Heschel's books. The one I would really recommend that's short and is his most famous is called The Sabbath. Really about what is Shabbat in Jewish tradition. Yes?
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Of course.
I'm curious, here we are, when I started reading the book, when Dan and Regina started this wonderful group, I was amazed at how current it was. That the problems and the things that we were talking about in the 60s, here we are in 2024 talking about the same thing. When you mentioned about the scar on the heart, so beautiful, the love. What do you think is preventing us from unity, to agreeing to disagree, to really lead with love? What do you think is preventing that, or what's standing in the way of that from your perspective and your
Sure. I think part of what's challenging is there isn't really one thing we can point to. I think it's a multifaceted problem, and that's why it feels in part so intractable. So I think some of it has to do with the collapse of community, right? If you've ever read Robert Putnam's book called Bowling Alone, It's a famous book that sociology students have to read, that basically in the 50s and 60s, Americans were joiners, right? A good American was involved in a faith organization, and you went on Sunday or Saturday or Friday, whatever your day, right? And you joined the PTA, and you joined the Elks Club, and you were on a bowling team. And now, most of us aren't joiners, right? People are across the board. Churches, attendance is down. Synagogues, attendance is down. People don't want to be involved in a big club anymore. It's more like now religion competes in a marketplace of capitalism, of like, come to our service, we'll have food, and it's uplifting. Like, we have to convince you that this is worth your time. So I think that's one problem, is there's study after study that shows we are lonely, we are isolated, and we know each other less well. And then on the internet, we're stuck in an algorithm of people who think exactly like us, where people say violent, hateful, destructive things because they're not looking you in your face, right? And then it just builds that hate in you, and it makes, I was listening to NPR this week that said we're at record low levels of trust. We don't trust government, we don't trust religion, we don't trust universities, we don't trust each other. So for me, I think the solution is, and look, I am a mere rabbi. What do I know? Right? I think some people want to get more involved in politics, and that's great. For me, I want to get to know my neighbors better. I want to actually become more micro, yes. I want to volunteer more. Like, I live next to a guy who we're like, we should get together. I've lived there for a year. We have not gotten together, right? Let's actually get together with our neighbors. Let's volunteer. Let's try to help people who are suffering here in DuPage County. And look, we are a purple congregation. American Jews, we're like the American Jewish community. We're about 80% vote Democrat, and that's what was shown in this election, I think 79%. But we're a purple community, and when I think of the people in our community, regardless of what party they are, they're good people, right? If I called someone in the middle of the night who I know is on the other side from me, they would come and help me. And I think when we focus on that, some of this begins to collapse. I'm worried, however, that we will retreat into further polarization, further rhetoric, further internet, and social media. I think social media is incredibly harmful. It can have positive, but I think most of us are frankly addicted to it, and it's bad. So, yeah, Regina.
I want to make myself clear, Dr. Wilson. I don't want anybody to walk out of here thinking I think I'm a prophet. The only thing I can prophesize is what I'm going to wear to a game. But I do want to say this, that I believe, and this is my own opinion of Dr. King, and I think people might agree with me that Dr. King was a prophet. And I'll say why. It's because anytime you can prophesize many, many, many years ahead of time what's going to happen in the next century, you are definitely, and also exercise to try to make an attempt to address the issues of concern.
Yes.
And then it comes to pass.
So he prayed with his feet, in the sense he didn't just give lip service to an idea, he acted. And the test of time has shown that his words were prescient.
He was a testimony.
Yeah, yeah.
To say that you will encounter this in the future.
Beautiful.
And so with that being said, I do believe that he was a prophet in his own right.
Amen. Yes, and then I want to stop us and invite us to go to the other side so we can continue the tour and conversation. There's more food, there's more coffee. Please.
And oh, great Rabbi, my question is very pertinent for this moment. Will you speak to us on the need to commit, to be intentional in how we work with each other, and I believe understanding the history supports that, but often we come into these precious spaces.
Yeah.
We leave out unchanged. So what do you want us to take from this gathering?
Sure. And I should name, I'm just me, right? So I'm sure Dan and Regina and others might have things they're wishing you're taking away as well. But I think for me, it's that, look, there are people in this room who I'm sure disagree about really fundamental issues that divided Americans in this election. The war in Israel and Palestine, women's reproductive health care rights, who's going to go to heaven or not. But, so it's easy to say come together. What I'm encouraging us to do is when it gets hard, when you're actually in the room with someone who really disagrees with you on something big, that instead of immediately shutting them out and saying, well, I can't talk to you unless X, that we should get curious, try to ask them about something, try to find a connection with them. It doesn't mean we have to be friends with people who are hateful against us, right? You don't have to be friends with them, but maybe we can be curious. We can be more intentional in that respect. And I think that's all I can ask each of us to do every day, is to try. Another saying from the sayings of the fathers is, in a place where there are no human beings, try to be human. Right? So I think each one of us in this moment should live into our values that we're talking about here of being compassionate and caring and loving for the people in our lives. So thank you. So if folks, we said till 9:30, that's about 5 minutes from now, so we understand if folks do need to go. We'll have until about 10 a.m. when another group needs the sanctuary for us, though, still to have a tour of the synagogue and the sanctuary and answer any questions about Judaism.
Just one last moment, Rabbi, that was a TED Talk. That was a lot of work to put that together, and let's please have another big round of applause for Rabbi. Thank you so much. And thank you all again for coming. I've never been to a synagogue, so I can't wait. So let's go in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. So I've got a helpful little guide here, right? We have 4 Torah scrolls. 2 are actually Holocaust scrolls, meaning scrolls that survived the Holocaust, that were rescued from synagogues in Europe, and now we use them. And the one that we primarily read from is one of those. We have another one over here that we keep, though it's not kosher. Now let me explain that. You're like, wait, you eat the Torah? No. Kosher means fit, right? So there's food that's kosher, meaning it's fit to eat, right? If a Torah is kosher, it means it's good, it's good to use. And why this Torah is unkosher is because it's been damaged to such an extent that you can't read some of the words. And if you can't read God's word, then it's not kosher, right? And we've looked into having it repaired. Not cheap. And since we have 3 others, we're kind of waiting. But I wanted to show you, when Jews refer to the Torah, what do we mean? Okay, we mean Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Okay, the 5 books of Moses. That's what's in these scrolls. But those are not the only holy texts to Jews. We also have the Hebrew Bible, which we would call the Tanakh, which is an acronym for Torah, right, the 5 books, the Nevi'im, the prophets, right? We talked about them. And then the Ketuvim, the writings. That's like Esther, Ruth, Psalms, Proverbs, Job. Okay, so those are all holy works to Jews. They're just not in the Torah scroll that we read on Shabbat. Okay, and then this one shows you the weekly calendar of Torah readings based on each portion. Again, from right to left, right? So Genesis, which in Hebrew we call Bereshit, and then how we've broken up that book into the different readings that we read each week. So this week, we are now in the 4th Torah portion of the book of Genesis, which is the beginning of, which is where Abraham and Sarah learned that they're going to have Isaac. Okay? So if anyone wants to take a look at those, you can. But now let me take out the scroll. Okay? And we'll come over here to this table. So a Torah scroll we try not to touch because all of us have oils right in our hands, and if we, as you heard, if we smudge the writing, that's not a good thing. So we use this. As you can see, there's a little hand on it, right? And it's called a yad, which means hand. We're not very good at naming things, Jews. It's just like, what do we call it? Well, it's a hand. Okay. Could I ask you to actually pull this cover off for me?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, and just go ahead and set it down there. That's fine. Okay. So the Torah is rolled to where it should be for this week in the book of Genesis, which is why it's mostly on this side, right? So it's a little lopsided right now. But please feel free to come up and get close. If someone could actually hold this. Okay, it's fine to touch the wood part. Okay, but here we are in the Torah, right? It says, Vayihi Avraham ben Tish'im Shana, that Abraham was 90. 99, V'tisha Shani. Vayira Adonai el Avraham, and that he saw God, Abraham saw God, Vayomer Elav, and said to him, or God said to Abraham, Ani el Shaddai, that I am Shaddai, which there's a lot of debate about what that means, but it's another name for God, right? So something interesting here, if you look like on this sheet, say, or in the prayer book, you see these little marks below the letters? Mm-hmm. Those are the vowels. Okay? Hebrew has vowel symbols. The letters themselves are not the vowels. And so when you're reading from the Torah, I want you to notice there are no vowels. Do you see? There's no marks below the letters. Yeah. So reading from the Torah means you've got to prepare, right? You've got to read it in advance with the vowels, or you just have to be really good at Hebrew. But even then, it's not just enough to be able to read it because it's chanted. So there's even a whole other set of marks, the trope marks, the cantillation marks. And so I'm not even going to chant this because I don't currently know what they are. I'd have to open up a printed version and see. Okay? But that's what makes sometimes reading from the Torah very difficult and also leads to a lot of the rabbinic interpretation. You ever heard someone say, the Bible says it and I believe it? Mm-hmm. That's not a Jewish saying. Okay? It's like, I read it, and now I'm in a debate with you and you and you and you and you about what it says, and part of why is because, well, does it say mimena or mimona, which changes the meaning of the word? And at a certain point, our rabbi said, this is the version we're going with, but there's debate, and those positions are reserved. I wanted to also say the names of the books. You guys, right, know it as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are Greek names that have to do with the thematic content of the book, right? Genesis is about origins. Mm-hmm. The Jewish names for the books are based on the first significant word. So this book is called Bereshit, in the beginning. And I say first significant word because sometimes the first word is like then. Right, and we didn't want to name the book then. But, right, so the Jewish names are Bereshit, Shmot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim. So, we read through this in 1 year. We don't read literally every word. We're on a 3-year cycle where it takes us 3 years to read every word in the Torah. But we are still following the weekly calendar of Torah reading so that we're always reading from the same portion as other Jews around the world. Only at certain times does Israel get a week ahead, and that has something to do with ancient calendrical issues, basically, where, remember, Jews used to not be a diasporic people, meaning we were based there in the land of Israel, and so the holiday had to be declared, and it was done by seeing the moon. And so they were like, now we know it's the holiday, but once people were dispersed, there became a tradition to make the holiday longer for people who live outside of Israel. Just to be sure that everyone was observing the holiday on the right day. Even today now, when we have satellites that tell us exactly what time it is, there are still some communities that are like, but it's a tradition, right? Okay. Now, why was I saying that? Oh, just to say that sometimes we're not always reading the same portion. They'll get a week ahead, but then we all kind of come back together. So another thing about the Torah is the scribe who writes it, right? This is all handwritten with a feather quill. If they make a mistake while writing it, they can try to fix certain parts, but you see how it's not one continuous scroll, right? That there's different sections. So if they mess up a certain word, they have to start a section again, right? So they're very intentional in going very slowly, right? And all of these little details are important. The crowns, right? So every little piece, there's certain parts, the indents, right? There's other parts where it's written in 2 columns or things, and that all has to be followed. If they mistakenly mess up writing God's name, which looks like this, Yud, He, Vav, He, they would have to start the whole Torah again, not just the section. So when they're writing that name, they're extra super careful. Something interesting about God's name, and then we should stop because we have to let another group in here, but we could move, we can start moving around the building.
That's out of respect for God.
Of course.
Yes, that was explained to me. How old is this?
How old is this Torah
Yes.
specifically? I don't know, Bernie, do you know how old the Torah we use most weeks is? Okay, yeah. Is it one of the Holocaust Torahs?
It's a Holocaust.
Yeah. Now, there are people who still commission new Torahs, right? You can get a brand new Torah today. They're not cheap, as you can imagine. Also, this is animal parchment, right? From a kosher animal. All of the connective parts of it, right? So there's a lot of rules and precise pieces. Is coming to meet with Bernie. Okay. Can you put it away from me? Yeah. Thank you so much. Sure.